Use Academy. Please help me welcome Marc Williams. Thank you so much for being here. I've seen you so many times on stage. I've known you through other platform, Toastmasters International, and never had the privilege to sit down with you like this and talk. Thank you for making out time in your very busy schedule to have this conversation with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Good. I'm excited about it. Let's start from the beginning. You're an author, right? You have 3 books.
Yes.
The Rules of Engagement for Public Speaking, Every Day Should Be a Tuesday, and Beyond Limits. Those are your books. So, I mean, the first thing I can think about it, the second title, Tuesday. Why is Tuesday your favorite day of the week?
So that's a great place to start. I had a moment when I was walking to work one day, thinking about motivating people. I'm always thinking about motivating people, right? And I was wondering, sure, we could motivate everybody every day, but what's the one day of the week where people need the most motivation? So I did a little bit of research because that's just the learner in me. And I discovered, contrary to belief, Monday is not the day when we need the most motivation, because somehow we are mentally prepared for Monday to be a rough day, right? We're thinking about it Sunday, like, oh, here comes Monday. But once Monday's gone, you got Tuesday and the rest of the week. So I discovered that Tuesday is the day of the week when most people need the most amount of motivation. So that is how I wanted to be of service to the world, by giving motivation when people need it the most.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. And in addition to that, even as a researcher, most of the time when we plan research, we plan our research on Fridays or on Monday. It's the Tuesday, the reality of the work hits on you. Like, yeah, I really have to do this because thank you for sharing that. And so when I also in school, I hear Tasty Tuesday. Right, that's another way people, we have programs around that to motivate graduate students to actually look forward to Tuesday, because Tuesday is one of those times that they have to do a lot in the lab and classes, but then we also want them to come and get free food, and we call it Tasty Tuesday, just to excite people.
I like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. So like Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, Taco Tuesday, Tasty Tuesday. It's all the same thing. It's the same strategy. Thank you so much. Now, let's go into how this authorship has impacted your speaking, right? How has being an author impacted your speaking?
You know, that's a great question. I didn't start off as an author. I started out as a speaker. And what I realized is that no matter how much you may enjoy speaking your message, it's very difficult to reach everyone. And so by writing your message, you give yourself an opportunity to reach the people that you cannot be in front of at the moment. And that is how being an author has helped me as a speaker. It's helped me to reach a wider amount of people. I will tell you the other thing that being an author, being a writer, the act of writing helps when it comes to communication. Putting thoughts on paper is not only very therapeutic, but I feel like it, at least for me, it gets my thoughts out in a way, and it gives me time to really think about what I want to say in a way that is unlike speaking. I mean, at the end of the day, speaking is a very impromptu and extemporaneous thing, right? We do it all the time. We have conversations. I don't know what the next word's going to come out of my mouth. I'm just going to speak, right?
Yeah.
But when you sit down, especially as an author, you give yourself the time to really think about how you want to put your words together. And even though, and this is going to be a revelation for many people, I don't write speeches before I speak. I could tell you a little bit about my process a little bit later on, but I will say that I would recommend for most people to write down their thoughts or at least outline their thoughts in writing, and that will help you to create a much more clearer message. So that's how
Wow.
being an author has helped me.
Wow. Wow. So you said you started by being a speaker. Being an author just came along the way, and it has actually helped you in your public speaking to reach a wider audience.
Yes.
That's very impactful.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
here's the story. I was asked to speak to a group of young men, young Black men in particular, at a school. And I didn't necessarily know what I was going to talk about. And then I thought about my life growing up and my similarities with these young Black men. And so I decided to tell my story. And I just outlined what I wanted to say on a napkin.
Yeah.
And after I gave the speech and I saw or I received, words of encouragement, words of praise from the speech, I then took the napkin and everything I wrote on it, and then I wrote the book.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how my first book was born.
That's powerful. So I thought that it's only researchers that are stranded of a book to write on in the lab that actually writes on the napkins. So you actually write on a napkin too.
Yes. And I have that napkin somewhere. I have it somewhere. I will always keep it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So that's something that needs to be studied. How many people from different professions actually have the opportunity to write on a napkin, and how useful is that thing that they wrote on a napkin? That's something to study.
Well, I got to tell you, I think it's something that a lot of people should consider, because the ultimate reason why I wrote on a napkin, or researchers, I believe, write on napkins, is because we have seen the benefit of capturing your thought as soon as it comes to you. If you wait too long to write it down, it might be gone in the million and one things that we think about. So writing on a napkin just shows the immediacy and the urgency of getting your thoughts out on the paper.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One of the books by one of my mentors is The Ideas Rule the World. Ideas rule the world. But then the problem with ideas is that they fly all around. And it seems like they fly over your head. And if you can't catch it quickly, they're gone.
That's right.
The same idea is probably going to be picked by another person. Before you know it, an invention is out. And you're going to like, yeah, I thought about that. But then you didn't do anything about it. Another person did something about it. And they're already a billionaire because of that.
Listen, I love that you said that. There's a million and one people walking around this planet who are like, I thought of Amazon before he came out with Amazon. I came out with SpaceX before he came out with SpaceX. You're right. You're right. All right. We gotta capture them as soon as they come to our heads.
Yes. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I also want to go into now is when this journey for public speaking started for you. One of the things that I read in your book was the 7-year-old experience you had in a class. And I think probably that's when the public speaking interest started. But if just let us know if I'm right or if it's another time every day.
So I always give praise to my second grade teacher, Mrs. McIntyre. May she rest in peace. If she is no longer on the planet with us, it would be a wonder if I could ever get in touch with her. But again, I don't know if she's around anymore. But in the second grade, I had a teacher, Mrs. McIntyre. She was super, super awesome teacher. And one of the projects she had us do was a storytelling contest. Or maybe it was a storytelling assignment. Maybe it wasn't a contest. And I remember not necessarily having books at home, but I did have a TV. And one of my favorite things to watch as a kid were the Looney Tunes cartoons, Bugs Bunny and everything else. And I remember for my storytelling assignment, I basically retold the Goldilocks and Three Bears version from Looney Tunes. Right? That was what I did. And that's what introduced me to it. And I think that's when the bug was planted, but I wasn't really aware of the bug. Because I think that there's this other memory that seems to circle around my head a whole lot more. The one that traumatized me so much that I'm surprised that I'm even here with you right now talking about speaking. So the story that I write about in my book happens around Christmas time. Mrs. McIntyre had us sing the song, The Little Drummer Boy. Now, I don't know how many people know that song, The Little Drummer Boy, but I hate the song. Like, let me lean in for a second and tell you, I hate the song, The Little Drummer Boy. Like, it irks me every time I hear it. And I think it's because it's this traumatic moment in the second grade. Mrs. McIntyre had the entire class sing this song. And Mrs. McIntyre was the type of person who could tell in a room of like 5,000 people, but one person singing off key. Guess who that was, right? So she's like, stop. Somebody's singing off key. And then she looked around the room and she turned to me and she said, Marc, I want you to sing by yourself.
Oh, no.
Right? The tears started falling down my face. Before I could open up my mouth, I was just in tears and I was crying. I thought I would never want to do anything in front of a group of people again, especially not singing, but probably not even speaking. That is a moment that I look back at all the time, not from a traumatic perspective, but from a moment of growth. I can appreciate now being able to get up in front of a group of people and speak because I knew how hard it was back then. And so I actually encourage a lot of people to think about those moments when, ooh, you were put on the spot, or ooh, when you weren't able to do something as well as you would like to be done. You got exposed for not being good at something. Yes, those could be traumatic moments, but those could also be moments that spark something in us. So I always tell that story, and I laugh at myself when I tell that story, because I now appreciate that is the indicator of how far I've been able to come. I used to cry at the thought of speaking or singing in front of people. Now I can laugh about it, and now I can do it.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a very powerful story that I enjoyed in your book. One of the things that we also should talk about is the impact of public speaking on your career. In your book and your introduction, I found out that you were a class teacher, assistant professor, assistant principal, principal. Now you're also doing something around speaking beyond being a principal. It seems like there's a career projection with that. And so how did public speaking impacted that level of career progression that you had?
It's funny you ask that, because as much as being an educator is synonymous with public speaking, I don't know how many educators actually think of that connection, right? As a matter of fact, I will tell you that most educators, when they're not speaking in front of their own class of students, aren't very comfortable with public speaking. Especially in front of their peers. Oh my goodness. Teachers speaking in front of teachers? That's a tough crowd. It probably makes a lot of sense now when I think about it, that when I discovered this love or this joy or this skill of speaking in front of people, that I became an educator. I think it goes back to the learner in me, and now the learner wanting to expand knowledge. And how do you expand knowledge? You speak, right? You think about the history of speaking. It was people going from town to town to town to either share stories or to share news or to share knowledge. And so the ability to take information and to present it in a way that people easily got it and joyfully got it, I think once I learned that, that helped me to become a better educator. As a matter of fact, I always say, I remember studying education and I was taught this, that education should be like, or rather the classroom should be like the ancient Greek theater. One part education, one part entertainment. And once I discovered that formula, I think that helped me to become a teacher. I think once I embraced that as a teacher and I started to speak up, and let me backtrack for a second and say, remember, speaking in front of other teachers is incredibly intimidating sometimes. And so even as a teacher, I did not necessarily speak up a lot at meetings. But once I started to speak up at meetings and people started to hear my voice and started to hear my ideas that I also got from colleagues that I was working with, then that started to get me attention and it started to present opportunities to do other things. I would not have become an assistant principal had I not actually decided to not keep my voice within and actually to take opportunities to speak up, listen and speak on the things that other people are sharing. And so that helped me then to become a principal. And now I do professional learning for central and district staff at the school system here in New York. And all of that really comes from embracing this skill of communicating your ideas. So it has really helped me move up in the system. But I would say the other thing that it did for me, and I remember this distinctly, it was probably the year after I joined Toastmasters when a teacher that I worked with, she came to me and she said, "You seem a little more confident. What have you been doing?" And the only thing that I had done differently is I had joined a Toastmasters club, which really meant that I was now speaking on a much regular basis. I was exercising this communication skills muscle on a regular basis. And so all of those things have helped me to move up in the system, create opportunities for myself, and then to teach those skills to other people so that they can create opportunities for themselves as well.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Because we all run with the assumption that if somebody can stand in front of the pupils and teach, that means they're good in public speaking. And that's not true. So it should be the other way around. People should be taught how to speak. Then they can now go back and stand in front of kids and teach. And I'll give you some example about that. When I was in school, I can remember a lot of teachers that actually know what they're teaching. But I have a couple of them. One teacher will put a pen right here while teaching. And all this time, what I'm going to be doing is looking at the pen and making sure the pen doesn't fall off. Another teacher will just dramatize and do something strange while teaching. And another teacher will just say something funny or just say, oh, and just all manner of stuff that I know that now that I know that public speaking is about 50% gesture and body language. Now I know why I couldn't understand what those teachers were trying to communicate. I thought that was a problem then. I thought, well, maybe I just couldn't understand anything. But it turns out that the teachers then were not just good public speaking.
Yes. You know, I got to tell you, I'm thinking back to when I was in college studying the craft of education. As I was preparing to be a speaker, come to think of it, public speaking is not a class that educators have to take in order to get their certification or degree. I actually think that should be a mandatory course. But it speaks to education in general. We don't even teach our children the skill of communication and public speaking and presentation. And yet there will be moments along our school trajectory when we're assigned to step up in front of the class and give this presentation or to memorize this monologue, and it's like, I don't want to do it, right? So we don't really teach the skill, at least not in a way that it really sticks and builds confidence and dare I use the word mastery. We put our children up in front of a room. We take out the grade book and we watch them as we grade them on the thing that scares most people the most. And then we question why. And I remember reading this, we talk about research, that it's over 80% of people, and now I'm talking adults, who think they're good at speaking, but really aren't even as good as they think they are. And even if they are good or are not good, almost everyone is still nervous and afraid to do it. And yet, at the youngest possible age, we don't really teach this skill in a way to erase or at least to relieve the fear. That's something we need to change.
Wow, interesting. So for me, when I teach, when I find out that within the class, there are students that probably don't get along and see that they are not trying to help each other, and I know that they need some extra points, what I do is that I just create extra credit. And extra credit is going to mean making sure they're in a group and they have to do something together and they have to present about it. You see how people who don't want to get along, because of the extra credits, they want to get along now, all of a sudden, because of that. So that's something I do when I teach. One of the things you mentioned already today was the fact that there's education piece and there's entertainment piece. And usually we try to separate them. And during my last podcast with my friends from United Kingdom, we actually talked about this, education and entertainment. And we came up with a word that is already known already, edutainment.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, it doesn't have to be that it's all separate. You can be in a class and teach students in a way that it's interesting to them, so that they can feel that they are learning, but they are also really getting excited about what you're teaching. I think that's something that teachers can learn. So, and also still talking about public speaking, in your book, you talk about finding a fun way to speak, right? And so based on your experience, I know you have a lot of experience around speaking. What are the ways you have been able to find speaking, find how to make your speaking fun for you first, then hopefully with your audience they can also have fun while you're speaking?
That's such a great question. Thank you for that. I am an avid storyteller. I don't know if I always was, but as I talked about Mrs. McIntyre earlier, clearly she introduced storytelling into my life. I find telling stories to be one of the most fun-filled ways to speak. And so I'm always not only looking in my own lived experience in my own mental library, but every time I read something, I'm looking for a new story to tell. Anytime I'm in the streets of New York City or the subway in New York City, I'm looking for another story to tell. Every time I crack open a book and read a chapter, I'm looking for stories that I can retell to people. Stories and storytelling make speaking for me so much fun. And when you think about our everyday conversations around the dinner table, around the holidays, it's usually when people are sharing stories. Oh, let me tell you what happened today. Oh my goodness, you won't believe what I saw. That's when we tend to feel most comfortable speaking. And so I do often encourage people to tell stories. And I have found also the stories that make me laugh. And I'm not necessarily talking about being a stand-up comedian. You know, I'm not here to be a Kevin Hart or Chris Rock or Jim Gaffigan, right? That's not my role. That's their role, and they're excellent at it. I don't think you have to be a stand-up comedian, but I think we all have a funny bone and a sense of humor, and we all have something that makes us laugh. Even if I just said something and you're like, man, that wasn't funny, but it was funny to me. And I find that when I can talk about things that make me smile and make me laugh, that then becomes fun. And then if I can, in the nature of the many children's stories that we've heard of, if I can then attach some kind of a lesson that is of value to others, then that makes it fun, that makes it meaningful, that makes it valuable. So that's how I have found my way of making speaking fun. Look for stories that you enjoy telling, and then tell those stories in a joyful way.
Wow, that's a big lesson. That's a big lesson. I'm gonna make sure I take that seriously as a growing speaker. Yeah, thank you. Very relatable. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, one of the things you said earlier today is the fact that you know that a lot of people write their speech, but for some reason you don't usually do that. And so my question around that is, if you don't do that, how do you typically get ready for your speech? And maybe you use your speech, your most famous speech, your mama, as an example.
So I'm glad that you asked that. Let me tell you, I use what I have now coined as the Lil Wayne Jay-Z method of speaking. What does that mean? So I remember a couple of years ago, I was watching a documentary on the rapper Lil Wayne. And at some other point, I saw another documentary about the rapper Jay-Z. And I remember hearing something about both of them that really stuck with me. Lil Wayne does not write his lyrics. Jay-Z does not write his lyrics. What I learned from the documentary was that they go into the studio and they sort of freestyle. Or as some classic jazz musicians might say, they go in and have a jam session and they see naturally what comes up. Some of that'll come up won't be usable, and some of it will be awesome. And these are two hit makers, right? And that's the process that works for them. For me, when I heard that, it resonated so much because I thought about my process. And my process is pretty much the same. Anytime I come up with a topic that I want to speak about, I might walk around a room like this and just think of what I want to say and how I want to put the words together. And I'll go over it a couple of more times until it kind of gets locked in. And then I build upon it in my head, that entire speech, never writing anything down. After it has been created, that's when I then go back and I either record myself or I write it down. I like doing it this way, and it works for me because it helps me to capture my most natural conversational voice. And while I acknowledge that that process may not work for everybody, what I would encourage everybody to do is to experiment with it. Because one of the difficult things about communicating and presenting is that sometimes we feel we're not being authentic, we're not being ourselves, we're not finding our voice. It doesn't sound natural. There's no more natural way to speak than the way you naturally speak in conversation. And so I create in conversation mode. And so that's why I call it the Lil Wayne Jay-Z method, because I'm doing a verbal jam session in my head to then create my content. Now, to connect it to what you said about the speech that I had the absolute privilege and honor to deliver this past August in Anaheim for the Toastmasters Convention, that whole speech about your mama, about my mama, I love my So much of what I shared in that speech comes from, get this, stories that I've told over and over again. If you know Mark Williams, then you know the story of when I walked in the kitchen. I told my mother, I'm hungry. I want a bowl of cereal. And she said, go over there and get it. And I was like, I don't want to get it. I want you to get it. And she was like, what? And she said, if you don't want to go over there and get it yourself, then you don't really want it, right? Like when I said that on stage, and I tell that story on stage, I've told that story 1,000,001 times to family, to friends, to children. I tell it all the time. And so, yes, I use this Lil Wayne Jay-Z method, but I also use my lived experiences, moments in my life that have resonated the most that we tell over and over and over again. This, to me, is one of the easiest access points to elevating your speaking skills. Think about your lived experiences. Think about what you've learned from those lived experiences. Do a little bit of research to kind of back up what you've learned from your lived experiences, and then share that with the audience.
Wow.
It's easy and fun.
Wow, I think that's a secret of being a public speaker, world champion. If you're listening to that, I mean, you just have it. I think if that's the only thing that you said today, I think you've said something in my own opinion. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things that I've also learned from you, watching you speak and watching people speak, is the fact that you have to know how to interact with your audience, reading the room. Based on your own experience, how have you been able to read the room and just know when to change something that you wanted to say all of a sudden, just because of the vibe that you're getting from the room? Or from the audience, that's what I mean.
I'm going to take my glasses off for a second. Because a lot of times when we talk about how to get better at public speaking, we often say, yeah, I know the obvious. We always talk about things like vocal variety and body language and eye contact. The first rule of engagement in my book is all about eye contact. People are not just listening to you speak, they're watching the way you express yourself. On the flip side of that, you're not standing up in front of the room with your eyes closed speaking. You're standing up in front of a room with your eyes open. Don't just use your mouth to speak. Use your eyes to read the room. Use your eyes to bring people in. I will look at people for a good 5 or 6 seconds and speak to that person just for a moment to make that person feel like there might be 1,000 people in the room, but for this moment, it's just me and you talking. That's the power of being interactive. But then I also go back to my experience as a classroom teacher, and I think this did help me out a lot. Listen, if there's one audience of people who you really have to get buy-in from, it's students in a classroom. Why? Most of us have been there. School is not always the most popular place to be, right? The age-old thing is that kids hate school. I don't want to be in school. Why do I got to be in school, right? Yeah. So they're a tough crowd to appeal to and to engage with. And I have found that the way that you best engage with students or with audiences or with people in general is you pick up on their energy, you pick up on their vibe, you look at facial expressions, you look at body language, you look at confused faces and know, whoa, I got to step back and say this a little bit differently. You look at the head nods, you look at the head, the shrugs, like, what the hell are you talking about? You read up on all of those different things. And then you even read up on people kind of like dozing off and sleeping. And it's like, I got to do something to get them up, right? So reading the room is all about making that eye contact. So I'm going to break it down to the most simplest communication skill of all. Use your eyes. Look at people, talk to people, communicate with people, and see what they need in that moment to receive your message most. And if that means that you have to now alter a little bit, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, What comes before you have to say is how they receive it. Because it doesn't matter what you say if they're not paying attention.
It's meaningless.
So you've got to use your eyes to read the room.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Read the room. Still in the spirit of being in the front of the audience and speaking, one of the things that people have complained about, and everybody can relate to, is nervousness. That's just those 5 seconds before you start to speak that you wish that this day never exists. I think everybody has that. Even the most experienced speaker always say, well, yes, I a little bit nervousness, but I had to do something or say something. And in your own, when you feel that nervousness, what do you do, and what would you recommend for people?
There's so many different things that I have stumbled upon. One, I love listening to my music. I love listening to my music. I'll put my AirPods in and I'm just going to jam out to something before I get started and just kind of hype myself up, you know? and I kind of walk on to, I remember one time I was giving a speech and the song that just happened to be on was Circus by Britney Spears. I know I got a very eclectic musical taste, right? But I just remember just kind of bouncing and dancing along to it. And that just got me going. I had another time, Tribe Called Quest was in my head. Can I kick it? Yes, you can. And I'm just going on. But then there's other times when I have found that listening to some 2 or 3 minutes of guided mindful meditation has been good for just kind of calming the mind down. And, you know, for those of us who are very energetic, this can also be very good too. Nervousness moves fast, so mindfulness slows everything down, and we think about our breathing and especially deep inhales and deep exhales I think can be very helpful. I also find that mantras, I will listen. We all need a mental cheerleader. We all need that mental locker room coach who's going to give us the halftime pep talk. And so there's a lot of halftime pep talk going on in my head before I even speak. But I'll tell you one other thing, and this one comes from a community that I helped to co-create called the Speaker Skills Academy, right? And we have revolutionized the way people become great at speaking. And a part of it is not just by getting up in front of the room and speaking, but it's around really playing what ultimately are games, or we call them drills, to practice these speaking skills. But before we get everything started, here's what we do. And I'm going to ask you to do this one with me. We hold our hands up. All right. We put them together. And then we rub them together. We make fire. That's what we call it. We call it making fire, right? And then we let it out all over the room. So, because here's what we found. The brain doesn't know the difference between excitement and anxiety. So we trick the brain into firing up this energy. And if you do it fast and quick enough, you can feel like that energy in your body, and then you just let it out around the room. So that's a quick hack or a quick practice that I would like to offer to everybody. Fire it up before you get speaking, and then let the energy out all over the room.
Wow, that's so good. That's what you did at the beginning. I was like, what is it doing? Is that a form of prayer from your country? What's going on? Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful. Thank you. I'm gonna do that every time I try to speak.
We need the whole world making fire every time before they speak.
Yeah, good. This is very practical. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things you said earlier today is that you find a way to make your audience interested in your speech, but you're not Kevin Hart. But I know that in Toastmasters, there's something we call humorous speech, and I've seen people put humor in their speech. I've had funny moments in people's speech. In your own situation, when you want to give a speech, when you're preparing a speech, how do you identify that funny moment? How do you identify those things that you think, I think this could be funny? Maybe I had to eat. How do you add humor into your speech?
Ooh.
How do you take that risk of saying, well, I think maybe if I say this, people are gonna laugh more than feel irritated? How do you make that decision?
So, as soon as you just said that, in my head, I replaced the word humor with levity. Because humor is very subjective, right? I don't know if what I'm going to say is funny, if you're going to, but a moment of levity to, right, kind of break up the seriousness for a moment. And I remember, we're talking about research. That's going to be a classic word for today's conversation. I remember doing a little bit of research on humor. And in the research, I found that children, the type of humor that they're into is more like slapstick, physical comedy. Somebody falls, everybody laughs. As we progress in life, we go from that slapstick humor to maybe a little sarcastic humor to what is now known for adults, especially, as observational humor, right? So we notice certain things that everybody can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we speak on that, right? Sort of like when you wave at somebody down the street and you realize, yeah, they weren't waving at you. Like, we've all been through that, right? I remember delivering my speech called Your Mama. And there's a point where I talk about losing my mom and how hard that was and is and probably always will be for me. And I remember reading the room and seeing some people get a little choked up and teary-eyed. And I remember, I would love to think of a moment of levity that I can input. And so there was one time when I was delivering the speech, and knowing Toastmasters, right? If you know Toastmasters, then you know about your green card, your yellow card, and your red card, because timing is of the essence. Nobody knows that better than I do, right? Timing is of the essence. So I remember talking about how much this world could benefit from a mother's love and this whole concept of loving like a mother, because I said we live in a world where there is crime and hate and corruption and injustice. And that was very heavy. And then I thought, well, what's an example in addition to crime and hate and corruption and injustice? And then I thought, well, in the world of Toastmasters, timekeeping. And I remember when I said that, in this world, we've got hate and crime and injustice and corruption and timekeeping. Because that audience knows about timekeeping and it's so ingrained in the fabric, that became something relatable, and I won't say humorous, added levity to the moment, and it broke up the seriousness. So I think the way to create levity in a speech, or to use the word humor, is to look for things that everybody in the room can laugh about, right? It's almost like it's an inside joke that the entire outside can get.
Yeah.
Because we all experienced it.
Wow. Thank you for saying that. One of the things that I've also seen people do is taking people in this direction and all of a sudden change it. That bump that you have on the road also just make people laugh, and just unexpected twist to the plot. I think people like that a lot.
Yes. Well, that goes back to that research, right? The brain loves patterns, right? The brain loves figuring out patterns. The brain also likes when we break the pattern. And so that is the secret behind a lot of humor. Just when we thought you were going to say this, you said that, and that made us laugh. So yes.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. So what's your best humor experience and worst humor experience in a speech?
Ooh, man, wow, that's such a great question. I think my my most memorable humorous experience in a speech was a talk I did called Short on Confidence. And I start off the speech by saying something to the effect of, I'm about to do something that I never thought I would ever do in public. And then I reach down and I take off both of my shoes and I toss them to the side. And then I unbuckle my belt and I toss it to the side and I pull down my pants and everybody's like, what the hell is he about to do? And I'm wearing shorts. I'm wearing like basketball shorts underneath, right? So it wasn't a striptease.
Yes.
But it was a speech about how I don't like wearing shorts in public. That whole concept, I remember, was shocking and funny all at the same moment. And I think it goes back to your point. Nobody was expecting that, right? You think about what's the thing that people usually say when you're afraid of public speaking? Imagine the audience in their underwear, right? I remember hearing that, right? Well, I reversed it. Instead of imagining them, imagine me. So that's one of the most memorable moments of when humor worked. I will tell you, I'm trying to think of a moment when humor did not work. And considering that I don't necessarily think I'm a funny guy, I'm just somebody who likes to add levity. Nothing in particular, no one particular moment is coming to mind for me when something bombed. What I will say is, I think, actually, if I go back to this past summer being in Anaheim for the Toastmasters convention, I mentioned Brooklyn. I made fun of Brooklyn in terms of how dangerous it can be, right? And I think as somebody from Brooklyn, I was trying to add levity to it. But I remember one person thinking, oh, but don't make Brooklyn sound like that. Don't give into the stereotype. And it was like, that's not what I was going for. So I think that's a memorable moment of when the humor did not work, because self-deprecating humor, and I'll call it self-deprecating humor because I'm a proud kid from Brooklyn. Sometimes self-deprecating humor can be great until people think that you are not humorously self-deprecating yourself, but you're self-deprecating yourself in a way that doesn't make them. Yeah. So I think that was it. I think so. Be careful with self-deprecating humor. It's a great tool, but you can go over the edge with it.
Wow. I've never thought of it that way, because I always think self-deprecating humor is the best because you're not making fun of anybody, but you're making fun of yourself. But then if it means that you're also making fun of a group of people that you belong to that is also in the audience, then somebody can get sensitive and react the way you're not expecting. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very practical experience you're talking about that. One of the things that I know that I also want you to talk about is the quality that separates you from other speakers. When you look at your own experience as a speaker now, what quality would you say, well, I think this is why most people want to listen? Because I've seen you speak before. Like, nobody wants to do anything while you're speaking, right? And I don't know why. But in your own opinion, what do you think? What is that unique factor that you have that separates you from other public speakers?
I can appreciate that question. And what comes to mind for me is my good friend Penelope Baum. I was speaking, and this must be almost 10 years ago. I was delivering a speech. It was actually, it was this, I don't know why the name of the speech is escaping me right now. But after I delivered it, I remember she came up to me and she goes, I enjoyed the message, but the delivery wasn't physical enough. She said, your strong suit is that you are a very visual speaker. Like, I move around a lot. Like, I don't think I move around so much that it's distracting, but I will get into my story. So like when I talk about my mama and I say, boy, you don't go over there and get that bowl of cereal yourself. I find that what helps me to find my unique style is being physical, is taking myself back into the moment. So it all ties back into storytelling. When I'm telling a story, I'm in the story. I'm standing here in that kitchen. My mother is standing right there. The bowl of cereal is over there. When she sent me back to my room, it was over there. Like, I'm in the moment and I'm reliving that moment. Even when I was giving that speech called Your Mama, and I talk about how hard it was going to the cemetery and sitting on the ground and looking up at the sky and asking, what did I do so wrong that you had to take my mommy away from me? For that moment, I'm not on stage. In that moment, I am sitting in the cemetery on the ground, crisscross applesauce, looking up at the sky. It's very important for me to be in the moment that I'm talking about so that people can experience it, so people can feel that they're right there with me. So when Penelope said to me, you're a physical speaker, use that strength, leverage that skill. I feel that that is something that has been a unique quality of my speaking that has then brought people in.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Being in the moment. Thank you so much. Now we can all start thinking about what makes our speaking unique also, such that we make sure that you don't remove that from your speech, because if you remove that from your speech, people are going to say, well, you didn't even give a speech at all. We didn't hear anything from you. And that can be very frustrating. That's what we don't want.
No. If I may, I always like to make this basketball reference. Shaquille O'Neal was known for not being a very good free throw shooter, but he could slam dunk a ball like no one could. He could even shatter the glass on the backboard. He leveraged his size, he leveraged his strength. And while, yes, he could have worked more on the free throw, right? But this is what we don't often do as communicators, as people, as leaders. We're so busy trying to work on the things that we're not good at. And I won't say instead of, I would say it differently. We spend more of our time trying to improve the areas that we're not so good at, and we don't spend enough time leveraging what we are good at. Leverage what you are good at and bring more of that into your speaking and communication.
Wow. Thank you. What a powerful message. So now it's clear that your mom was one of the people that impacted your journey. Your mama's speech is an example. That speech, you can listen to it over and over again. I really love it a lot. But then there's still this saying that said, it takes a village to achieve success. And I can imagine that in your own situation, your mom is not the only person in the village. Just like my mom is not the only person in our village. So in your own village, who are the other people that supported your journey through being a great public speaker?
Wow. Thank you for giving me this space to pay homage. My mom, right? My stepfather, Sonny, my aunts, my cousins who cared after me, who came in and taught me lessons that I now teach to my own children, the stories that they've told. I always talk about my cousin Teresa in particular, but I don't want to just give one shout out to one particular family member. So my cousin Teresa and Taisha and my cousin Tanya, who I got to see for the first time in 17 years when I was out in Anaheim, California. But I also want to give nods to my teachers. I mentioned Mrs. McIntyre earlier. Mr. Trott was my drama teacher in high school. Mrs. Palmieri, may she rest in peace, was my drama club advisor. I had a professor from NYU, Professor Green, who taught me so many tricks and trades and different ways to become better at speaking in public. And then I think of my good friend Kathy, who that's my sister, right?
Yeah.
This is my mentor, and she's taught me so much. And forget about it, the tons and tons of Toastmasters world champions that I've met across the time, whether I've spoken to them directly or not, have helped me tremendously. And of course, my own wife and children. My children sometimes poke fun at me for being so animated, but that tells me what really stands out to them. And my wife is so super supportive, and yet also so very honest in terms of what she feels works and what she feels does not work. And she helps me a lot to leverage my strengths. So I got a ton of people in my village, including you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, well, I know we're at 11 o'clock already, but I want to keep going for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
Let's go.
One of the things that I read in your book that I really like is this statement. I hope this book will be like the music you play in your headphones. That's from your Beyond Limits book. And because of my experience, I started to sing before I started to speak. And my question to you is, do you believe there's a connection between singing and speaking?
Not if you heard me sing. All jokes aside, yes, singing is a composition for a message. It's a playground for words, and how do you mix these words and these rhythms together to get people to listen? Speaking is the same thing. How do you play around with these rhythms and the verbs and the vocabulary to get people to listen? There is a musicality to speaking. Shakespeare talked about iambic pentameter. Yes, I just went complete English teacher on you, right? But he talks about the iambic pentameter, which he says is the natural rhythm of the human voice. We have a rhythm, and then we've got all these words. And so, yes, singing and speaking are absolutely connected, because this is how we get people to listen to our message. And both are creative forms of communication, right? And so, yes, the creativity, the rhythm, the play on words and the play with words is what connects singing and speaking.
Wow. Thank you so much for saying that. And for me, I don't consider myself a very good singer too. But then I've noticed that when I do include singing in my speeches, the Toastmasters audience like it. And when I give a speech, and people are like, yeah, you talk about singing, but you didn't actually sing in that speech. So what's the meaning of that? Why did you do that? So a couple of times they made me give the speech again just to make sure that I had that piece to it. So
you should do that. I will tell you, there was one time I went on stage and I started singing. Yeah, not a good choice for me. Not a good choice.
You know why I think it's also important to be able to do that if you can is because in Toastmasters we talk about vocal variety, all right? We talk about the tone, the speed, and the volume. And when you're singing, that's what you're playing with, anyways. That's why people want to hear that. If you do that, it's very difficult for somebody to say, well, you didn't use vocal variety if you sing in your speech and you were a little bit and this kind of thing. It's very difficult because the emotions are probably going to be there. Your tone is going to change. Your volume is probably going to change. And that's something that I think is very powerful for sharing.
Well, I gotta throw this one in real quick. Somebody shared this with me as an exercise that people can do. Take one of your favorite songs, and rather than just sing along to it, speak the words, right? And you may find that even as you speak the words, you're speaking them in a rhythm. Try doing that today. Pick one of your favorite songs, just speak the chorus, speak the verse, add some rhythm to it. You'll see the connection between singing and speaking, like you pointed out.
Wow, I'm gonna try that. Thank you for sharing that. I have to get to this because you have been speaking professionally and you have students that you've impacted. You also have clients that you've also impacted. What is the most inspiring story from either your student or your clients around public speaking? Which story would you remember that's like, oh, I think this person really make me know that what I'm doing is something that is really impactful based on the outcome that they had, or based on the process based on the changes that you've seen in their life or you've seen in their life.
Thank you for that question. It has been an honor and a privilege to coach and to train people to help them get better at speaking. I'll borrow a tip from Patricia Fripp. For those who don't know Patricia Fripp, she's a speaking and communication coach. And she says, when we want to answer that question, what do you do? Try telling the story of the last person you helped. So here's the story of the last person I helped. Someone came to me and said, English is not my first language, so I struggle when I communicate. Sometimes that interferes with my confidence. And because that is the case, I tend to write things down a lot. And instead of speaking naturally, I tend to follow this script. And I want to get away from the script and I want to feel more confident. And so I took her through this exercise around the 6 most common emotions in human language. And what I shared with her is that for every emotion, there is a lived experience, right? So if you think about happiness as one of those emotions, and you think about a time when you felt happy, that's a lived experience. And so I took her through all of these different emotions, and she shared a whole bunch of different stories. She wrote to me about a week later and spoke about a conversation that she had with a group of people that she worked with. And she said for the first time, she didn't have to script out anything. She said for the first time, she felt comfortable speaking because at one point she was thinking about the message she wanted to share. She was thinking about that first. This time, she thought about the emotion she wanted to feel and express. She put the emotion before the words, and then the emotion gave her the words to express herself freely. And so when I got that email, I was so overwhelmed to be able to share something that brought something amazing out of somebody else. So put your emotions before your words, because your emotions will give you the words to express yourself.
Wow, thank you so much, because emotion rules the world, moves the world. People are very emotions anyway, so people are very emotional. One of the things that I want to make sure I have opportunity to talk about is your journey to the convention. And you had the opportunity to be the finalist I think in 2014.
2010, 2004, 2000. I've been there 3 times.
Oh wow!
Yes, I've been there 3 times.
Wow! Wow! That's powerful. So, in what I don't even know what to ask. So, what I did. This is a very big feat and something somebody said a success is not really a success until you can reproduce it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do research in the lab, we always say that in order to know that you really have a good result, another researcher needs to be able to reproduce your result. And that's something you've done. You've been able to reproduce that. Like it's not a luck. It's not by luck that you went that far. It's because you have the quality, you have the skill to be able to do it. That's why you've been able to go that far. And I really appreciate that. So any story you want to share on that, those 3 instances that you went to that stage, and also connecting to the one that we actually met the last time, which was this year. All right. Any story that led to that? What are the differences in the experiences in those instances?
The 3 times that I made it to the semifinals, and I'm blessed to say that the 3 times that I made it to semifinals translated into the 3 times that I made it to the finals, right? I'm very blessed and honored to share that, very proud of that. What ultimately got me to the finals each time was the speech that I prepared for the semifinals. And I share that because what it makes me wonder and explore is, what was it? Like, what was the process? I remember in 2004, before I went to Malaysia, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I had no idea. And then I thought about a story that I've told over and over and over again about how I don't like to wear shorts in public and how that's come up in conversations. I've been in hot places on vacation with family, like, are you really wearing jeans? And then I go back and tell them these stories, right? In 2004, I wasn't trying to come up with a speech that would win a contest. I was trying to come up with a speech that I enjoyed speaking about. I was trying to come up with a topic that I could talk about that has shown a transformation in me. That's the same thing that happened in 2023 when I went to the finals, semifinals, and the finals in the Bahamas. The semifinal speech was called Circles. That was not a speech that I created for a contest. As a matter of fact, I had a former student who works with the Special Olympics of New York, and he asked if I could speak to the students in that organization about how important it is to surround yourself. And so that speech wasn't about a contest. It was about helping young people to find something that could take them to the next level. And so I shortened it and turned it into a contest speech, but it wasn't meant to be a contest speech. And last year, when they asked if I wanted to compete in the contest, my first response was, I don't know, right? I had done it the year before. I had a lot of other things in my plate and a lot of things in my mind, and I just wasn't sure. And so I never gave a definitive answer. Well, it turns out I'm on vacation with my family, and I get an email, congratulations on moving to the next round. I'm like, moving on to the next round? How do you move on to the next round in something you never competed in, right? It turns out, long story short, that nobody else from my club had signed up. And so they assumed that I don't know kind of meant, well, just in case, let's assume he meant yes, right?
Yeah, wow.
And so it was a speech that I had never intended to make, but it was a speech that a story that I've always told, that's always been close to me. And so what's been the secret formula, or what's gotten me there every time? It's not thinking about competing. It's not thinking about a contest speech. It's thinking about a lived experience that I speak about a lot, that has transformed my life so much that I speak about it a lot, and finding the universal message in there that can be helpful to other people. And then just go out there and have fun. I will tell you, each of those 3 times before I stepped on stage, I always thought to myself, I don't know if there's a speech that can win this contest, but I enjoy doing it anyway. And it's the spirit of that has helped me to move forward. And so that's what I encourage everybody to do, because that has been a winning formula for me.
Wow. That's very powerful. So we all have to think about those lived experiences, talk about it so much that it becomes so natural, and you can have fun while talking about it in front of audience. Then that's the recipe. Thank you so much for sharing it.
and I just want to add this to this piece. The reason why you take a lived experience that you've talked about so much is because speaking in front of an audience can be a very highly anxious thing. And so the more we tell things that are already in our head, right? We've told them 1,000,001 times that we can just go out there with our eyes closed and it just comes out naturally. That's what you want to go up in front of an audience and do. Share something that already comes out naturally from you, instead of creating something that's highly anxious, and I hope they get it. Don't create that pressure for yourself.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful. So there's something that, excuse me, I always talked about. At a club level, that's what we call the humorous speech contest. And it used to go to the area level before, but now I think for the most part, it's now at the club level. But then we can see that people still make a living out of humor. They are stand-up comedians, and this is what they do for a living. And some of them have been doing some other things. A lot of people have been educators before. Like if you've listened to a couple of them. My question is this: what is your take on giving humorous speech opportunity to move to higher level? And what will it be like if you find out at the convention you actually have humorous speech contest as alongside the international speech? Do you think that would be a good idea or a bad idea?
Oh, I think it would be a great idea. And here's why I think it would be a great idea. I think that there are so many people who have great strengths in multiple areas. And the International Speech Contest is a great contest for sharing an idea or sharing a motivational lesson. The humorous speech contest can do the same thing, but the leverage is in the humor. The table topics, the leverage is being able to do something that's not prepared. The evaluation is the leverage of having the foresight to see how somebody can get better. As a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, all 4 of those contests and the what do they call it? The tall tales, I think, or the video. I think all of those should be on the main stage. We should be celebrating the many different types of ways that people communicate. But I understand, the international is the main event. I think you can have a main event, and I think you can have a whole bunch of other contests and have multiple people shine in different ways. So I'm a huge supporter of taking all of those different contests to the world stage.
Wow. I hope our leaders are listening to this and think about it while they're making decisions. One of the things that is also being a very sensitive and hot topic in Toastmaster is the change from traditional manual to pathways. How has this impacted your speaking?
So I do come from the manual era before pathways. I want to say that I like the manual more, but I also recognize that was my entry point, right? So that's something that I was introduced to. So it would make sense that I would prefer the manual over Pathways. I'm sure those who have entered through Pathways, they're going to like it more than whatever the next version will be 30 years from now. So I get that. I like the manual. I also like having a physical book. I like having it signed when I went to the meetings. So I prefer that, but I think Pathways works just as well. I think part of my journey, just speaking particularly as Marc Williams, one of my goals as a Toastmaster was always to become a DTM. I became a DTM on the crossover between the manual and Pathways. So it's also hard for me to speak on Pathways because I reached one of my main goals before it started, right? And I'm just like, if I do another DTM, that's great. Some people do 10-fold DTMs. I just wanted to do it once. So I recognize that that's also why Pathways is not in my heart. So there's a lot of different reasons why for Marc Williams, Pathways doesn't work as well as the manual. But I do acknowledge progression and evolution. And for those that it works wonderfully for, I'm glad that it's here as a resource and as a tool.
Oh, thank you. I should have called you Distinguished Toastmaster Marc Williams. I'm sorry I missed that.
Oh, no, I'm not in the title. I'm just happy that I had a goal and I achieved a goal.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the experiences that we actually quickly talk about before we start wrapping up is the fact that you're actually a TEDx speaker. You spoke at the TEDx event before. What was that experience like, and what would you recommend for somebody who is trying to do the same, to be a TEDx speaker?
It was an honor to do a TEDx talk. I actually have a goal to do another one at some point in the future. I am very blessed that I did not have to apply for it. It was held at my former high school. And so they were looking to build out the agenda, and I was invited to do it as opposed to applied for it. I want to be able to go through the application process because I hear that's a doozy. So to be able to get through the application process and to be selected from somebody outside, that would be an awesome experience. What I loved about doing the TEDx talk is the focus on the idea, more so than the delivery. They say you can't be a motivational speaker and do a TED talk because it's not about motivational speaking. It's about having an idea. And so I love how it pushed me to think about concepts and how do you get people to receive this concept. And as the learner and the researcher, we've been talking about this, it really taps into that need to back up what you're saying. And I feel that that has become a part of my keynote speaking, my coaching, my competitive speaking. So I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed how it has helped to evolve my speaking. So I encourage everybody to apply for a TED Talk, or even if you never apply for a TED Talk, I would encourage everybody to incorporate the concepts of TED Talking into their speaking. Always come with an idea that you can share that others can benefit from.
Wow. Ideas. That's coming up again. We talked about that earlier. One of the things that I want to make sure we have time to talk about is your show with Kathy. It's about to go down with Marc and Kathy. What is that about?
Kathy, my close friend, my mentor, my sister, reached out to me during the pandemic, said, I got an idea. I said, stop right there. Whatever the idea is, I'm all in, because Kathy is the idea queen, and whatever she does is going to be gold. And that's why I stick so closely to her. She said, why don't we do a web show where we take our experience as speaker and presentation and communication coaches, and we have conversations with people about their ideas. And then we will coach them on how to expand those ideas and reach broader audiences. And so it started out as a way of pulling the curtain from behind coaching, but it has evolved since then. right? And we're about to start our 11th season. And while at first it started off with Kathy and I coaching people, it has now evolved into what we call idea conversations. So when we invite you on, and we're going to invite you on, Doctor, right?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. What we do is it's the three of us. You come with an idea that you want to talk about, maybe an idea you would want to do for something like a TED Talk. And we just have a conversation about that idea, an organic, unscripted, unedited conversation about an idea. So as I talked about TED Talks before, this continues that theme. Let's have an idea conversation. And it's been an absolute wonderful experience. We have had 10 seasons talking to 100 plus people about some awesome ideas. And we look to continue doing this in the future. So it's not a podcast, it's a web show.
Wow.
And there is an audio version available. We build off on the visual because, as I spoke earlier, no one's sitting there with their eyes closed listening to you. We give them something to listen to receive, and to see as well.
Wow. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to learn more about that. One of the things you mentioned earlier today is the Speaker Skills Academy. What is that? What do you do with that?
Speaker Skills Academy, as I said, is this unique way of helping people to become better at speaking and become great at speaking. We spoke about this earlier. Speaking is the second biggest fear of all humanity. And the way that we teach it is we put people up in front of the room when they're most nervous about it. And what we discovered is you don't get better at anything by doing it. You get better at it by practicing it. Athletes don't get better during the game. They get better during the practice. Performers don't get better during the concert. They get better during the rehearsal. And so what we did is we have thought of and continue to create the nuances of the 1,000,001 different communication skills. And we have created practices, drills for all of those different skills. And whether it be skills around content creation, skills around body language, skills around delivery, skills around humor, like we've talked about, there are 1,000,001 different skills. As a matter of fact, even the last drill session we're going to do this year is called Jingle and Jive, right? And it's based on the skill of using jingles like the ones that we hear in commercials and on TV, and how do we use that concept in our speaking to make things more memorable, right? And people won't just give speeches, they're going to do these practice drills. And the Speaker Skills Academy is not a program and it's not a class. It's a community. It's a community of people who come together. And I like how somebody described it. It's almost like game night for friends. And we found a way to ultimately, I'm going to use this word, to gamify the skill, or rather the practice of learning how to get better at speaking. And I will tell you this, many years ago, I was asked to do a public speaking course for elementary school kids. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, especially because some of those kids weren't even reading yet. And so what I learned is I can't teach them the traditional way. And so basically what I did is I created a gamified version of public speaking so that kids didn't think they were learning, they thought they were playing. Here's my last reference. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Karate Kid, but in The Karate Kid, he has him painting his fence and cleaning, wax on, wax off, right? And at the end of the movie, the kid is like, Daniel's like, you're not teaching me how to do karate. You're teaching me how to paint your fence. And he shows them that the painting is actually a move, that the wax on and the wax off. He didn't realize that he was learning, but he was learning through doing something else. And this is a concept of Speaker Skills Academy. We have drills, we have games, all designed around different skills. And for an hour and a half, twice a week, we play these speaking games. And in the process, we become better at speaking. We leverage our skills at speaking. And we have formed a community of family and friends who have gotten to know each other so much more. If anybody wants to learn more about Speaker Skills Academy, we'll definitely drop a link or something. And we invite everybody. We always invite people to join us, even just to check us out for a little bit before they decide whether or not this is the right community for them. So it's a whole lot of fun. And if I ever thought that public speaking and fun could be wrapped up into the same sentence, it is now.
Wow. Thank you. That's what we try to do in Toastmasters, but then sometimes it's difficult to do because the practical side of that is not there. So you're bringing in the practical side of it. That's very good. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the involvement is with the Great Day Squad, Story 2, and Storyhood. What is that about?
So these are things that I got involved with during the pandemic. Great Day Squad was awesome. Got to give a shout out to my brother Ben. Ben created the Great Day Squad as sort of the Netflix of personal development, and would invite all of these different motivational speakers and especially professional athletes to come in and to give the Great Day Squad, this community, all of these tips on how to perform at a peak level. And it was awesome being a peak performance coach for the Great Day Squad. I hosted, but I give nods to all of the different guests who came on and gave us amazing information about sleep and diet and exercise and all those great things. The Story 2 and Storyhood are both similar. And during the pandemic, my friend Carol said she wanted to find a way to help people during the pandemic. And she discovered that her love of storytelling is something that could be healing and comforting for a lot of people. And so once a week, a whole bunch of us would jump on a call just like this, and we learn about the art and craft of storytelling. And then we would practice telling stories every time we got together. So Great Day Squad was peak performance level. Storyhood and Story 2 was peak storytelling. And that's how I spent a lot of my time during the pandemic, constantly helping myself to improve and finding ways to help other people to improve themselves.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've just like 2 questions before I release you. These are less serious question. Growing up, what was your experience growing up, and what was your relationship with family, and in America and outside America? What was your experience growing up?
I was a poor kid growing up in a part of Brooklyn that had the highest murder rate in all of New York City. We grew up with next to nothing on public assistance, could not afford a lot of things. My mom was a single mom. We struggled a lot, but education was always enforced in me. Staying positive, staying optimistic was always enforced in me. I had a wild imagination, and I always say that it was my imagination that saved my childhood, because in moments of despair, in moments of not having much, I always dreamt and imagined of what I could one day have. And my imagination has now translated into my ambition. And my imagination has helped me as a kid. It has helped me as a leader. It has helped me as a speaker. And so I speak about my lived experiences a lot because it goes back to what I said earlier. My lived experiences growing up as a poor Black kid in a violent neighborhood is not a story of trauma. It's a story of a springboard. It reminds me of where I was and how far I've come. And so that's my story growing up. And I would not be here without all of the people in my village that we talked about earlier.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Did you at any point lived in another state or besides New York? Did you?
So technically, yes. But this is many, many years later, after I'd already started my career. I lived in Jersey for a little bit. But that was more of an aesthetic move, and it was just a wonderful neighborhood. I would not say that it had like a profound impact in terms of my development, because I had already been developed at that point. But I will say the building that I lived in Jersey, I remember when my aunt, may she rest in peace, when she came to visit me for the first time, and she had tears in her eyes. I was living in a high-rise building and had a doorman. It was a very fancy place, and it was a far cry from how I grew up. And I think the tears in her eyes were from understanding that where I came from was a springboard to where I am now. And so for all the people who have experienced trauma in their lives, again, it's all about how you reframe things. And so I encourage everybody to reframe what you've gone through and see it as how far you have come. And if you have not gotten to the place where you want to be in life yet, still understand that where you were is the springboard. You cannot get this high without taking that first step.
Wow, that's a very, very powerful message. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I also like to quickly, last question, you talked about your guilty pleasure, right? Watching professional wrestling and music. Why did you pick this guilty pleasure, and what impact do they have on your day-to-day experience?
Music has freed my soul. Music was something I played all night. When I went to sleep as a kid, I always had the radio on. I always had music playing. I could hear music in my dreams. Music frees my soul. It makes me feel so good. I love lip syncing along because I don't want to sing out loud. I make sing in the privacy of my own room. I love dancing. Music it fills my soul. If I had the voice and I could write, I would be writing music and putting on concerts. The way that I put on concerts is through speaking. Mm-hmm. As far as wrestling is concerned, professional wrestling is concerned, yes, the simulated violence is, here's the two things that I love about professional wrestling. Well, I'll say the three things. The first thing is just like your favorite movie, right? Wrestling is it's entertainment, right? It's like watching your favorite movie. When you watch The Terminator, he wasn't really a cyborg, right? When you watch Star Wars, they're not really in outer space, right? When you when you watch your favorite movies, right, that's not really happening, right? But we allow ourselves to enjoy suspending belief. And so I love that because I told you, imagination freed my childhood. So of course I'm attracted to anything that allows me to suspend my belief. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I love about professional wrestling is that most people don't really understand that it's really their art of storytelling. Even if you listen to interviews of professional wrestlers, they will tell you that even when they're performing inside the ring, they'll use the phrase storytelling. They are telling a story. I love my storytelling. So anytime I hear somebody talking about telling stories, I gravitate towards it. And the third and final thing that gravitates me towards professional wrestling is I remember learning this a long time ago. The people who become the biggest stars in professional wrestling are not necessarily the most muscular or the most physical. They're the ones who can grab a microphone, stand in front of a camera, or stand in front of thousands of people. Or as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would say, the millions and millions, right? They're the people who can stand in front and speak in a way that captures an audience. And the good guys can make millions of people cheer for them. And the art form of the bad guy in professional wrestling is when you can speak so well that people hate you. They want to see you lose. That's an art form, right? And so think about this. I'm into speaking because it allows me to suspend my belief and create content that will transform lives. I'm into speaking because I love telling stories. I'm into speaking because it gives me an opportunity to stand up in front of a room and make people feel a certain way. So it should come as no surprise that I like professional wrestling. The greatest stars ever were the greatest speakers. That's what communication will do for you. You don't have to be a professional wrestler, but whatever your line of work is, whatever it is that you want to do in life, your ability to stand in front of people and to express yourself, leveraging the strengths that you have as a communicator, that is what is going to make you. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson calls himself the people's champ. This will help you to become the communication champ in your own life.
Wow, this is really. I'm gonna just warm up. Can you tell us about the work that you do now with the consulting, and what's the big goal with public speaking? What is this big goal that you're trying to achieve with public speaking?
I got into consulting the moment after I gave a workshop at a conference and somebody came up to me and asked if I could coach them. I had never thought about coaching before that. And I remember my good friend John was my first client. And that taught me that the value that I can offer is not just standing in front of an audience and speaking. It's helping other people. And so now I do coach people individually to work on their confidence, to work on their content, to work on their delivery. I do work with companies who want to do this for their own staff, because no matter what line of work you're in, your staff has to speak to other people. And it's tough, but I don't teach them the content. I recognize and I acknowledge that you are the content area expert. But I can help you to communicate your content in a way that will get you the results that you want. And so that's what I've ultimately done. And what's the big vision? Well, the big vision goes back to the Speaker Skills Academy and everything that we do around there, right? I want to be able to help as many people as possible on this planet to find their voice, to find their message, to find their story, to find their comfort in expressing themselves in a meaningful way, and in a way that makes them not only help others, but in a way that helps them feel good about themselves. Speaker Skills Academy is going to be the thing that is going to help me to do that for millions of people. And so that's my ultimate goal. That's my ultimate goal.
Wow, thank you. You got to go back and help the teachers to first become the public speaker, so that when they go to the classroom, they can already teach in a way that can help students to better understand what they're trying to teach. So last thing, what do you have to say to our audience? Last message, anything you want to, and how can they contact you and things like that?
Best way to contact me is on LinkedIn. So Marc Williams, just look up Marc Williams on LinkedIn. That's the best way to contact me and connect with me. I'm on that a lot, much more than any website or anything like that. I am on Instagram, but LinkedIn is where I check out people the most. Go to It's About to Go Down show. That's where you can find Kathy and I. That's where you can sign up to be on the show if you'd like. Check out Speaker Skills Academy. You want to find out about Marc Williams and Kathy Armias? Go to speakerskillsacademy.com and find out where we are. Yeah, I've got my books. You mentioned them before: Rules of Engagement, Beyond Limitations, Every Day Should Be Tuesday. My final word attached to everything that I just shared about how you can get in touch with me is, everybody has something of value to share and to offer. You can't share your value if you don't open up your mouth and share what's in your heart. People want to hear from your heart. Maya Angelou said, they may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way that you made them feel. You've got lived experiences. You've got expertise. You've got knowledge. You've got strength. You've got things that people can benefit from when they hear it from you. And even if your message is similar to somebody else's, your story is unique to you. Find a way to find the courage, find a way to find the heart, find a way to find the love to share with others. And whether it's my book or my show or my program, well, not, like I said, it's not a program, community speaker skills, or whether it's something else. I don't profess to be the one and only resource of things that will help you to become better at the things that you want to do. But what I will say is find something. Because in the words or in the title of one of my favorite books of all time, Marie Forleo wrote a book called Everything is Figure-outable. Whatever it is you want to do in life, there's a way to figure out how to get it. And just because you haven't found it yet, it doesn't mean that your solution cannot be found. Use your imagination, use your story, use your village to find the destination that you were meant to reach. That is my final word, because I believe in you.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have to. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was been a very fun and entertaining session. I learned a lot. I hope our viewers also learned, wrote some things down, very practical. I'm going to do a lot of things that you recommended, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'll let you know my success story. Until next time, I'll see you again on Solution Illuminators Series podcast by our guest. Thank you so much, Marc Williams. Thank you. Bye.